The Toyota lights ablaze. Make sure the slower cars see them. Here we go. Oh my God! Oh my God! The Mercedes has taken off.
At the end of the 90s, Mercedes-Benz created a family of insane race and sports cars which made history unlike any other. These cars, and the CLK GTR first and foremost, are arguably among the most iconic and famous automobiles ever built. Previous generations all had their #1 dream car to put above their beds. In the 50s, the 300 SL Gullwing, the Jaguar E-Type in the 60s, the Lamborghini Miura towards the 70s, and at the end of the 80s, the Ferrari F40. But if you were a teen somewhere around 1997 and enthusiastic for cars, this CLK GTR certainly was one of your superheroes. This car came from another universe. It was mind-blowingly fast and extremely successful on the race circuits. And then the insane street versions took the race car to the road and till this day generate the excitement and fascination that made this very special CLK immortal. And the GTR is part of a bigger story, featuring in total 3 generations of race cars and 3 derived street versions. In my opinion, it's one of the most exciting stories in motor racing history, and it has to skyrocket on YouTube. And speaking of skyrocketing, you all know how the story ended. It was not in a good way, but in the most spectacular way you could imagine. And in that sense, it was quite an appropriate grand finale for this sensational generation of Mercedes-Benz sports cars. It was the perfect Greek tragedy in 3 acts. Let's unfold them one by one. Welcome to Car Crush. In 1996, Mercedes-Benz was still involved in the International Touring Car Championship ITC. They were competing against Alfa Romeo and Opel in a series which turned more and more into an arms race, with technologically extremely advanced vehicles getting more and more expensive. Mercedes won the 1996 championship, and at the end of the season, Alfa and Opel, due to the immense cost, decided to pull out of the ITC. That of course meant that the series was dead. So Mercedes was looking for new challenges and found it in the FIA GT Championship. This series was the successor of the BPR Global GT series and was about to start into its first season in 1997. It was an international series where Mercedes saw the opportunity to go against much more exclusive manufacturers like Porsche, McLaren or Ferrari. The only problem? We were less than 6 months before the first race and Mercedes didn't even have a sketch of the new car. And in order to meet the FIA homologation standards, they had to develop and build a road legal street version at the same time. It seemed impossible. So Christmas was cancelled, and in the record time of only 128 days, the designers and engineers at Mercedes-AMG have developed a brand new race car from a white sheet of paper, built the first prototypes based on a secretly purchased McLaren F1, tested them over thousands of miles, and finished the exterior bodywork with a final design. The result was mind-blowing. They've created a serious race car that still features some elements of normal production Mercedes cars, like the front and rear lights, the grille, and even the Mercedes star on the bonnet. The design language was inspired by Mercedes' latest model, the 1997 CLK Coupe, the C208. It was kind of an odd combination, but somehow worked brilliantly as a result. Power came from a V12 engine derived from the M120 that you all know from your standard S600. The first 2 cars were finished and ready to race just before the start of the season, on April 13th, 1997. The season opener took place in Hockenheim, Germany. Mercedes started from pole position, but both cars suffered technical issues. The first one had to be pulled out after 5 laps already, and the second one made it to the end, but was 20 laps behind the winning McLaren. It was a disaster. But only 4 weeks later in Silverstone, Bernd Schneider was able to finish P2, and the CLK GTR started to show its true potential. At race number 4, returning to Germany for the Nürburgring, Mercedes-Benz successfully outperformed the mighty McLarens to finish first and second. From there, they were off the leash and won 5 of the remaining 7 races, securing the team championship as well as the drivers' championship for Bernd Schneider. That was a hell of a debut season and an incredible achievement for Mercedes and AMG. And the best thing about all that driving in circles, it gave us this. The most ludicrous street-legal Mercedes since the 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe from 1955. The FIA regulation for the GT1 series required to build a road-legal version to be able to homologate your race car. What a brilliant idea! As a consequence, here was your 1.5 million euro hypercar packed with proper race technology and wrapped in carbon fiber that you could legally drive on public roads. And it was a Mercedes with its star on the bonnet and even a little boot. It was a sensation, and at that time the most expensive car in the world. The major modifications from the race car were an integrated rear wing, a proper cockpit with an airbag, bigger wing mirrors and a bit of bodywork cosmetics here and there. Oh yeah, and a license plate. The engine displacement was increased to 6.9 litres and gave it over 600 horsepower and a top speed of 214 miles per hour. With its dihedral doors, the air intake on the roof and the low slung profile, it was one of the most exotic and iconic cars ever built and instantly became classic. It got a huge fan base and its fame grew almost infinitely over the years. It massively gained popularity through show drives at public events like here at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2014. The appearance in many race simulations making it the #1 dream car of video gamers. And of course some mind-blowing prices achieved at public auctions. In 2018 this CLK GTR sold at Sotheby's for over $4.5 million. And as if all that wasn't exciting enough, Mercedes went completely nuts, ripped off the roof and presented the CLK GTR as a roadster. Apart from the obvious, the missing roof, they came with an updated front grille with integrated 3-pointed star, a redesigned rear wing which much more resembled the one from the race car, and a completely new engine cover with integrated roll bars and modified air intakes. The true reason for building this roadster was that Mercedes actually struggled with finding enough customers for the CLK GTR, which is ironic when you see the prices paid for pre-owned cars just a few years later. But unlike today, 1997 was not the year where you could ask any price for a limited series hypercar and rich guys from all over the world would line up in a queue to get one. So to get rid of all their chassis built, they came up with the charming idea to take the roof off and make the CLK GTR even more special. It worked out and all the cars were finally sold to customers. Interestingly, it remains a bit of a mystery how many cars Mercedes has actually built in the end. And the numbers vary slightly depending on where you look it up. After having a close look at several sources, here's my version of the story. They've built 2 coupe prototypes, of which one was crash tested. Then they've built 25 production chassis, but sold only 20 of them. The remaining 5 in the first prototype that wasn't crashed were turned into roadsters. And to make it more complex, there's also a super sport version with an even bigger 7.3 litre engine that AMG also provided for the Pagani Zonda. At least 2 of these models are certain to exist, and they are said to be among the 20 coupes. So to draw the balance, there must be somewhere around 26 CLK GTRs on this planet, and 26 very, very happy people. Or maybe a few less, because some of them are said to have needed more than one car. And for those of them who didn't get one, here came their second chance. After impressively dominating the GT1 series in 1997, Mercedes was fired up for more in 1998. In addition to the GT1 championship, they wanted to participate at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the oldest and most prestigious endurance race in history. To be successful over a 24 hours race, the CLK GTR had to be updated substantially to improve fuel efficiency, aerodynamic performance and durability. So the job was to create a completely updated second generation GT car, and to emphasize its main purpose, it was called the CLK LM. LM for Le Mans. The 3 most significant modifications were firstly the engine switch from the GTR's massive V12 to a more compact and efficient V8. Secondly, to better cope with the extremely high-speed profile of the Le Mans circuit, it was necessary to minimize the frontal area of the car and improve its aerodynamics to create less drag for more top speed. And thirdly, Mercedes implemented a new door concept with proper gullwing doors hinged at the roof, compared to the dihedral doors of the GTR. This allowed quicker driver changes during the frequent pit stops at a 24 hours race. The result was a much more efficient design with a lowered front end and a sleeker greenhouse. The most obvious visual distinguishing feature between GTR and LM was the new arrangement of the 4 headlamps. With this new phase, Mercedes was about to tackle the 1998 race season. In the first 2 rounds of the GT Championship, they still relied on the old car, the proven GTR. But then came Le Mans, and the moment for the new car to shine. The 2 CLK LMs entered were immediately quick and qualified on pole position. But that joy quickly turned into a nightmare on Sunday. Just a few hours in the race, both Mercedes suffered engine failures and didn't even get anywhere near to completing the 24 hours race. It was a humiliation and something to immediately forget. At least the pace was there and the cars were quick, and that was a good thing for the much shorter races of the continuing GT Championship. And Mercedes wouldn't blow that chance. The CLK LM was literally unbeatable and won every single race of that year, leaving absolutely no chance to the Porsches and McLarens. They easily secured their second championship victory in a row and devastated all the rivals. They actually devastated them so much that for the following year no competitor attempted to enter the GT1 class anymore. They had enough of being embarrassed by Mercedes and left. As a consequence, the GT1 series was cancelled by the FIA and the party was over. The CLK LM was history. Except for the mandatory street version, which was still to be built to comply with the regulation. This time only one unit was created, and it was this. The mysterious chassis number 2. It was built during the 1998 season and sold to a Japanese collector as the only road-legal CLK LM on Earth. And there's really not much information circulating about this car. We don't know how much it cost back then, and we don't really know where it is now. This LM is like a snow leopard, extremely rare and spotted only a handful of times over the last years. There's this short clip from 2010 showing chassis number 2 on a wet road in Japan. Somewhere towards the end of 2013, it was presumably sold to the classic car exhibition Retromobile in Paris. And there's a few pictures from the car at the Mercedes-Benz shop on the Champs-Élysées. The last time it was publicly seen was in 2015 at the Arts and Elegance in Chantilly. After that, it hasn't really left a lot of traces. Let's take a few seconds to enjoy some bits of the existing footage. This CLK LM is as miraculous and supernatural as it gets. It's one of the most spectacular and legendary cars ever made and the rarest Mercedes in the world. It was the ultimate pinnacle of the 1990s supercars, and from there it could only go downwards. Downwards? Well, yeah, the tragedy unfolded. Here comes the final act. The LM was so successful it killed its own racing series, so this playground was gone. But there was still an open job to do at Le Mans, and Mercedes desperately wanted to erase the memories of the 1998 debacle. So they went all in for another attack at the 24 hours, and this time were able to build an uncompromising Le Mans prototype without having to consider any road-going version. They had all the freedom to design the perfect high-speed endurance race car from scratch. It should even get a new name, the Mercedes-Benz CLR. Work on it began right after the end of the GT season in September 1998. It was supposed to have a radical new design, even sleeker than the CLK LM, all set up for maximum top speed and lowest drag. The exterior should be inspired by Mercedes' new luxury coupe, the CL, codenamed the C215. And the CLR had a much more technical, clinical design than the GTR and the LM. The carbon fiber monocoque was ultra slim, and the overall height was 4 inches below the LM. Which was a massive improvement. The engine was basically carryover from the LM, means they continued with the V8, but the displacement was increased to 5.7 liters. In February 1999, they've put the final touches at the first prototypes, and an intense testing program began. The CLRs were put to different circuits, from California Speedway to Homestead Miami to Manicourt in France and Hockenheim in Germany. After the cars have completed almost 22,000 miles in testing, they were proudly presented to the press on April 20th. These were the machines Mercedes would send out to succeed at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, one of the most epic motor races in history. Mercedes has won the prestigious 24 Hours twice. First with the 300 SL Gullwing in 1952, and then 37 years later with the Sauber C9 in 1989. It was about time to strike again. 2 days before race start, the qualifying sessions took place to sort out the starting grid. Mark Webber was driving the CLR number 4. He was chasing Frank Bieler in his Audi R8R on the long straight after Mulsanne corner. When he moved out of his slipstream to overtake, the CLR suddenly lifted its nose and became airborne. It flipped several times backwards before crashing on the tarmac. It was a horrific, spectacular crash. Luckily, Webber was only slightly injured and taken to hospital. No video footage of the incident exists. Both car and driver were able to recover till Saturday and miraculously would be fit for the race. And finally, the big day was there, and it started with a short warm-up session on that morning. All 3 CLRs were out on track. Mark Webber again on car number 4 that he had this massive crash with just 2 days earlier. Heading down Mulsanne Straight, he was approaching a Chrysler Viper. And then this happened. It was basically the same accident as during qualifying. Marshals put the car back on its feet and Webber got out without major injuries. He was lucky for a second time, but it was clear that this CLR had a serious issue. Only 4 hours were left till lights out. Very stressful hours indeed for Mercedes. Intense discussions within the team were held whether it was safe to race. The drivers described their experiences with the car and gave their opinion. Adrian Newey, the chief aerodynamicist at the McLaren Mercedes F1 team, was consulted to give his advice. Even the Mercedes-Benz board of management was involved. And finally, the decision was made. They would go racing. Dive planes were added to the front fenders of the 2 remaining cars to increase downforce, and the drivers were instructed to keep a safe distance to slower cars during overtaking. Beyond that, good luck. Mercedes, with 2 remaining cars, started from 4th and 7th place and quickly made their way through the field. It was a successful start and the pace of the cars was very good. The first pit stops and driver changes were done smoothly. On lap 76, after almost 5 hours of racing, Peter Dumbrek was already approaching the Toyota of Thierry Boutsen to take 2nd place. The 2 cars were nose to tail at nearly 200 miles per hour on the long straight behind Mulsanne's corner. And then? You can probably guess what's happening next. But this time we're live at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, with 250,000 spectators at the track and millions of people watching worldwide. Watch this.
The Toyota, lights ablaze. Make sure the slower cars see them. Here we go. Oh my God! Oh my God! The Mercedes has taken off. That's Peter Dumbrek at the wheel of the number 5 Mercedes. The car flew right up into the air, over the barriers, over the wire, and into the trees. Let's look at this again. This is an awful accident. An awful accident. He moves out of the slipstream of the Toyota, and the car just takes off. That looks horrifically like a replay of what happened to Mark Webber, who I hasten to add, but that's a big impact. Look at the earth thrown up. That is a very big impact.
What we're witnessing is certainly one of the worst moments of Mercedes-Benz Motorsports history ever. They immediately take out the last remaining car, shut down their garages and leave Le Mans absolutely destroyed. Until today, they never came back. Mercedes obviously made a huge mistake during the development of the CLR. But was it the stupid era of amateurs? Certainly not. These were experts with a decade-long experience in motorsports, including touring cars, GT cars and others. But in the end, this is what may happen if you take it to the limit, push the boundaries, go maybe a small step too far. These Le Mans prototypes are very sensitive cars. Similar accidents happened to Porsche in 1998 and to BMW in the year 2000. But the CLR was obviously too close to the edge. It was tested for thousands of miles. The 2 cars at Le Mans were racing for 5 hours without any issues. But when too many bad circumstances were combined, like dirty air from the car in front and corrugations in the road surface, the CLR flipped. We could make an extra video just to explain the physics and aerodynamics behind all this, but luckily it's already been done. I recommend you to watch this brilliant explanation by Autosport if you want to understand all the details. The complete GT and Le Mans program at Mercedes was stopped immediately, and in April 1999, the era of these insane cars with a big and dramatic bang was suddenly over. What remains? 3 hugely famous race cars that made history and have become legends, each in their very own way. A bunch of ultra-rare street version masterpieces for car fans and collectors to chase. And the unforgettable story of a Gullwing Silver Arrow that could actually fly. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're looking for great cars that are actually affordable, here are some more car stories from the 90s for you. And if you like all that, please subscribe. Bye!